Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions podcast. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and today we're going to go over the tight ends rankings for our fantasy football. We're going to do up to 25 tight ends because we want to make sure that we touch on a lot of guys, especially in best ball. So for your later rounds and stuff, when you go certain strategies, give you all an opportunity to see how we feel about them. And, this is a PPR ranking, but there are some guys that aren't on this list that, we're at the end of that we can talk about too.
Right. So, yeah, we'll get right into it. Again, the first two tiers, pretty much guys that will be undrafted in redraft leagues. We always kind of recommend usually get a stud tight end, and especially if you have a smaller bench, we have one less bench spot than a generic roster in our friend league. But usually, you get a stud. Don't worry about a backup, and get the extra receiver, get the extra running back, invest elsewhere. Best ball, kind of similar premise where you got 20 rounds. A lot of people do 3 tight ends. Get 2 studs and you'll be good.
Right.
Well, there's a lot more studs this year. It's really deep at the top, and then there's a huge drop off after tier 3. Tier 4, it's touchdown or bust for most of them on most weeks. They're the 3 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown guy that can sometimes hit for you. They're
Right.
cheap on DraftKings or FanDuel if you play weekly fantasy. I don't know why you would ever draft or start on a weekly basis any one of these guys, but sometimes there's bye weeks. You need streamers. You need, somebody to get you through an injury. These guys, I think, are capable of doing that. Hunter Henry has always had stretches where he's annoyingly efficient at the red zone and just gets 7 touchdowns like he did last year, even on the worst team. Ja'Tavion Sanders, rookie from UT. Usually, you don't draft rookie tight ends because typically that's a position that's hard to produce early on.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's going so low. He's basically not even he's an afterthought on ESPN, and he's right around 25 to 28 on every other thing. Again, Carolina, we're taking a stand on having more opportunity. They have one of the easier schedules, really easy for receivers and tight ends. He has opportunity. He has volume opportunity. So maybe he'll get you the occasional 2, 3, 4 weeks where, he goes for the 3 for 60, which he's capable of.
Right. Of course.
He's an athletic. He came in as an athlete
Mm-hmm.
when he was recruited. So very athletic person, underwhelmed at the combine. That's why he fell a little bit to Carolina. Went with his buddy Jonathan Brooks to Carolina. So, we'll see what happens with him. Isaiah Likely, I think he's in this tier. Obviously, he's the one guy that has something to gain if an injury goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Garrett Wilson goes down, I don't think Tyler Conklin's that big of a target upside. Same with Chigo Okonkwo. If D Hop and or Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd goes down, he's not going to vault to 8 targets a game. Same with Ja'Tavion Sanders. Same with Hunter Henry. But Isaiah Likely, he showed last year when Mark Andrews went down how he could be a tight end 1 for your team consistently. Very athletic tight end, really strong, really good. He's just the backup to one of the best tight ends in football. They do run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but he just doesn't have a lot of weekly upside while Mark Andrews is playing.
Right.
He's the 3, 4 targets a game, possible touchdown. But when Mark Andrews goes down, he jumps up.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And Isaiah Likely, we talk about handcuffs when running backs, but this is the only tight end handcuff you've got because
if you draft Mark Andrews in any draft,
Isaiah Likely.
Pick Isaiah Likely too.
Right. And if you look at the rest of the guys on this list, like they're all starters. The only one that's not a starter is Isaiah Likely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of his upside when he is playing. Chigo Okonkwo, like you said, they want to throw the ball, but he'll probably have, close to 4 targets a game. Maybe. And it's not going to necessarily win you big bucks, but he's a guy that if you have to pick up off the waiver wire, you can get him. Tyler Conklin, same exact build as I just said. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and he's possibly a 3 to 4 target guy.
Yeah, so. Chigo Okonkwo, he was a guy that I did not take any kind of bait on last year when people were thinking like the 8 to 10 range was really up in the air for overall tight ends, and they were trying to throw names out of a hat. Chigo Okonkwo, they were like, oh yeah, he's gonna be a guy that flirts with consistent volume and not even close to a red zone threat. He's just nothing. And then they added basically 3 pass catchers in this offense now.
Mm-hmm.
So he had less than 500 yards last year. without much competition. Now he's got even more. I just don't see anything other
Right.
than the occasional touchdown. Same with Tyler Conklin. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really target tight ends that often, and he did okay, but he's just okay. He's going to be a free agent all year. I don't know when I would ever start him. And then he's just a tight end 3 if you need him
Right.
in
For
the
sure.
best ball draft.
And then moving to tier 4, these are the formidable tight end 3s, uncomfortable tight end 2s. These are the ones that if you go and get a stud tight end, you might say, hey, let's see what Luke Musgrave can do if you want to put him on the bottom of your bench. We wouldn't do that in our drafts, but, most of these guys are made for best ball, truly. Starting down there at the bottom, Ben Sinnott, he was our number 2 tight end coming out this year. But at the same time, he's going to Washington. Cliff Kingsbury may not be a true, NFL coach. We'll see. Offensive mind, at least. And then he's playing with another rookie. And then there's mouths to feed. It's like there's not very much opportunity for him. So,
yeah, I mean, Ben Sinnott, I was hoping that he would be in the Jatavion Sanders range when these best ball drafts came out, but he's kind of in a spot where I'm really not getting to him. And again, similar range. He's the epitome of this draft. Is like if you need tight end depth, he could be serviceable, but if he's your tight end 2, I don't feel good about it at all.
Right.
Taysom Hill is a guy that has upside, probably the most upside in this range. If you're talking Underdog or Yahoo, it doesn't count because he's considered a quarterback. Maybe that changes throughout the summer, but right now we're just talking about ESPN, Sleeper, and DraftKings, where Juwan Johnson just went down with an injury. I don't know if he's going to miss significant time, but Taysom Hill's always been a good gadget guy that just he can throw it, he can catch it, he can run it. He just Swiss Army knife.
Right.
He'll have the occasional 20-point game, and that's why he provides more value. He's more of a best ball, but if he'll have his stretches where he has consistent volume, but then he'll have stretches where he has 1 carry, no targets, and it's just like I can't even deal with it. But in best ball, not as much decision making, so
right, he's fine there.
Very reasonable.
Yeah. And then Cade Otton, he's basically the number 3 option. Well, Rachaad White might be number 3. So number 4 option for Tampa Bay. Just another guy that you could say you could add at the end and hope that he, gets you the 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. So
yeah, I mean, he's just a guy that doesn't really get a ton of volume. Like first overall, tight end 20, second half of the year, tight end 19. I think he had 1 game where all of a sudden he got 11 targets out of nowhere. And then just really nothing else, but very reasonable goal line or red zone threat. Like it's not like they avoid him
right.
Anyway. He'll flirt with 5 touchdowns. So in those weeks, he'll pay off. He won't be that expensive. He should never be touched in a redraft league, but that's just kind of where we have him.
Yeah, I think Luke Musgrave is an interesting guy just because they have such volume, but too many mouths to feed.
Right.
That's the biggest problem with him. I don't think that you can consistently put him in your lineup. If he's your lineup when you have a bye week for one of your studs, fine. If you put him on a best ball team and you stack him with Jordan Love, good. But otherwise, he's kind of one of those guys where he's at the end of the tier where you just don't get to him very much.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically outside of ESPN. Everybody's got him at tight end 17. Tucker Kraft went down with a torn pec, so he could be a potential IR candidate to start the season. And so that kind of clears up the murkiness of him splitting tight end reps or tight end targets. So he has the opportunity to move on. Had a really good playoff game, and there's a lot of mouths to feed. But it's not like there's consistent mouths to feed. There's no Devontae Adams there anymore.
Right.
It's everybody's going to flirt, have their 20-point game, and then they're also going to have their 0-point game. I can't emphasize enough that Jaden Reed was the most consistent receiver for Green Bay last year. And they put up a 40-burger on Dallas. He had 0 catches. So, and they had 4 passing touchdowns. It was crazy. Went off, and he had no impact whatsoever.
Right.
So that's just kind of the thing you got to fight with Green Bay is I don't know when I'll be able to start him in a redraft league.
Yep. And then Pat Freiermuth. Steelers are really difficult because they have a new coach that loves to run the ball 50, 60 times a game. So with Pat, it's like, can you trust volume? No way. And is he like some special athlete? He's okay. I mean, he was one of the top picks in his draft class, one of the better ranked guys, but it's not necessarily a guy that you're like jumping for joy if you get, because he just doesn't have a volume. He has a very low floor and a middling ceiling. So
Yeah, I mean, last year had one game that went over 45 yards. He had one game that had more than 3 catches. In that game, he had 9 for 120 out of nowhere. That's same thing as the other guys. Like, you're gonna have the 1 to 2 games where it works out. I think it'll be one of the lowest volume passing offenses. There is opportunity because Deontay Johnson was a target hog and he's no longer there. They just went with a rookie and a kind of a bunch of role players with George Pickens, who, we're not as in love with, but he is by default their number one,
right.
and they're going to run the ball a lot. He could get 5-6 touchdowns and be serviceable in those weeks. That's all I can really say about him.
Yeah. And then next tier 3, touchdown dependent but serviceable players. You have Cole Kmet sitting down here at the bottom. He's the starter for the Bears. There are a lot of mouths to feed there also. They have, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, and then DeAndre Swift. He's probably not even, he might be the 5th option. He might be the 6th option. There might be other guys that you could put above him. So Cole Kmet's a guy that we're getting, but don't expect these boom weeks. He just has like a 6 to 7 point floor.
Yeah, he's interesting because last year he actually finished as tight end 7.
Yeah.
Right. And typically the tight end after 5 or 6, which the top 5-6 tight ends traditionally at least 12 points a game, and then there's a huge drop off.
Right.
Well, he was kind of the middle of the drop off. 10 points a game, very solid. He had some really good weeks, but they added 2 high target pass catchers. They added Gerald Everett, which was an interesting, I guess, investment. I don't even know if he would make the team, but it's an annoying gnat of a signing. 3-headed monster at the running back position, or 3-headed, backfield.
Right.
Not a monster per se, but yeah, I mean, it's a score offense that we like a lot. He's going at a very reasonable range. In the 150s now is where he's kind of fallen to. Overall, you're not going to draft him in redraft, but he's probably the last name that we just kind of feel good about in this range if you're going to go 2 tight end build. Because if you get a Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, and then Cole Kmet your backup, you're probably fine. But if you went Travis Kelce, Pat Freiermuth, I don't feel as comfortable.
Right, for sure.
With completely those kinds of situations.
Yeah. And then Dalton Schultz, the Texans tight end, got extended this offseason. He's basically in the same range as where everybody else has them. He's just a guy that is in a very high-powered offense with a lot of mouths to feed, just like we just talked about with Cole Kmet. But he gets targeted a lot more than Cole Kmet, I believe. You're looking
at he actually was targeted less last
year.
Really?
That's actually surprising. But it feels like he is targeted more.
Yeah, since he was in Dallas, he's a tight end that we haven't loved, but he's
okay.
Gets volume,
yeah,
some volume. So last year, 10.1 points a game, was tight end 10. He had his stretches, but again, similar to Cole Kmet, they added a ton to that offense with Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs coming over. Tank Dell had half a season,
right?
Essentially of work, and then Nico, of course, he's Nico, very very solid wide receiver 2 or 1, whatever you want to consider him. Yeah, we like him, don't love him. He's in week 14 bye, so there's a couple other tight ends in the earlier tiers that have week 14 byes. So again, if you're gonna go 2 tight end build, please don't have the same bye week.
Right.
It's basically, if you're going Mark Andrews, Dalton Schultz is off your board.
Right. And then the next guy is a guy we really love, and TJ Hawkinson, and his situation is obviously very sad because we want to get as much of him as possible normally, but with the injury, we don't know when he'll come back. And I think it's probably after their bye week, which is week 6.
Yeah.
So you get him from week 7 to week 17, which isn't a bad stretch. Don't get me wrong, but it's just investing in him would be you would have to get a stud tight end that had probably a later Mark Andrews, like you just said, and then getting a TJ Hawkinson. And then can he come back from the injury and be good? It's just a lot of ifs with him.
Yeah, he's a tier 1 tight end that has to be in tier 3 because of his situation. Obviously, whether it be a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold, doesn't matter. You're not confident from a fantasy perspective in either one, at least this year. And then, obviously, if you're coming off a ACL, MCL injury, couldn't have surgery until the end of January. But if you just do simple math, that usually a 9-month recovery period for ACLs, that puts him in October, which is right where you thought he would be. But sometimes it's even longer
Yeah.
just because of injury. I don't even think he's close to being ready yet. And he's the second half of the year, cross your fingers and hope. If you had, like you said, one of the tier 1 tight ends and then that's your backup, more than fine with that. But I don't think you can get a tier 2 guy, take him as a backup, and then be solid.
Right. And then the last guy in this tier, Dallas Goedert. A lot of mouths to feed also in Philly. That's kind of this section. You look at it, you're like, okay, well, these teams have really good pass catchers opposite these tight ends, but Dallas Goedert, just a serviceable guy that's been consistent. Nothing special. He might get you 6, 7, 8 touchdowns this year, and it's just okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that kind of his targets are a little sporadic. Like if you look at week 1 target, 0 catches, and then he had 7 and 7, then 4, then 9 and 8, then 5 and 7, then 4, missed 3 games, then he had 9, 3, 4, 3, 6. I mean, there's just so many mouths to feed. He's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if had 10 touchdowns out of nowhere, just because they do target him in the red zone. It's just a little bit more sporadic, and that's why is what he is. He's always been 11, 12 points a game as a tight end, very solid. But because there's so much more depth now at the position, maybe that's not even necessarily the peak or what you're looking for anymore.
Right.
But right now, reasonable ADP is going, I think, 105-ish in both underdog and best ball. He's basically tight end 12 across the board. He's fine for what he is. He's draftable, is what he is, but he's just one of those guys that he's going to have those boom and bust weeks, and he's similar to George Kittle, but just less talented.
Well, we still enjoy his talent. He's a really talented player. It's not that we dislike his talent. It's just his situation. But moving up to tier 2, we love all of you too. This is the tier where, all of these guys, we talk about the depth. Normally tier 2 is like 5 through 8, and then everybody else is past that. Well, we have 7 guys in tier 2. A lot of really good football players. Starting off, David Njoku. He is one of the best athletes at the position. That really helps him when he catches the ball in space and he's able to make a move and then take it. He's one of the few tight ends that you could be like, oh, he could break off a 60-yard touchdown. And so he's exciting. And then, right above him, you have Jake Ferguson, a guy that we talk about a lot. Getting Jake Ferguson in the, 8th, 9th round, or 8th round, basically. Mm-hmm. That's solid value for him. So it's just, all of these guys are, very good and could end up being the tier 1 guy,
And so we'll start off with David Njoku. Basically, everybody has him as tight end 10. We regretfully have him as tight end 11, but we love him too.
Yeah.
He's awesome. I am fine with him. I get a lot of him. He's perfect. Like, as long as you don't have another week 10 bye as a tight end,
right?
Ideal. Last year, week 9 on, for the fantasy season, number 1 in points per game, number 1 in targets, number 1 in fantasy points, tied for the lead, or tied among tight ends and touchdowns. Like, he finally broke into his own. It took a while, but Joe Flacco essentially just unlocked the beast, I guess. Now he's no longer there, and it's Deshaun, but Deshaun has always targeted tight ends. We just haven't seen him in his Houston form since he went to Cleveland.
Right.
It's a little bit projection because of that. But Jameis Winston coming as a backup, he's another similar to Joe Flacco, just high volume, just close your eyes and throw it, basically. And, he can highly benefit. He has as much ceiling as anybody above him. And if you put him at tight end 7, I don't blame you at all. I love him. Jake Ferguson, another guy. Dallas has always had a top 10 tight end in terms of fantasy. Last year, he was one of our best calls as a tight end 3, round 19. And it's just like Luke Schoonmaker is not a guy that was ever a high volume or a pass catcher at all. They got him as a run blocker, and he sucked at that too. Jake Ferguson comes in, kills it, 37 fantasy points in his playoff game.
Nice.
3 touchdowns. He's a red zone threat. Michael Gallup's gone. Really, he's the second receiving option in the entire offense behind CeeDee Lamb, which CeeDee, obviously, he's rivaling Christian McCaffrey as the overall number 1 player. And after that, Jake Ferguson's going in the 8th round.
Yeah.
Why?
That's great.
Why is he going 2 rounds below George Kittle and other guys? He is going to be consistently floor of 8 points every week. He's as safe as it can get. And his upside, maybe a little lower. I don't know if he can consistently put together 20 fantasy point weeks like other guys can. But we saw multi-touchdown upside in the playoffs. That was in spite of, just trailing from behind.
Yeah.
Good schedule, volume, opportunity. It's all there.
Next guy on the list, George Kittle. He's a really interesting one. I think we talked about him being at 11, and we talked about him being, at 8. It's just one of those guys that's really hard to predict because he's so good at football. I mean, all-around football player. He's the best tight end ability-wise when it comes to just football. But there are so many mouths to feed. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall. Like, the list goes on. And that's what makes him really difficult. We could not put him in the top 7. There's no way we could do it. And that was part of the thing is like, I'm personally okay with him being at 11, and I love him as a talent. Like, we love him as a football player, but it's like, how do you put him over all these other guys, Like,
guys, we want y'all to comment. We want you to interact. Tell us when we're wrong. Please don't come at us saying that we hate George Kittle. He is our favorite tight end in football.
Yeah.
But the problem is, in this entire range, everybody is a second, maybe third, but probably second option in their offense in terms of passing upside or volume. And consistently 10 points is what you'll get, and you have upside of 20. George Kittle, you got upside for 30, but you also got the downside of 2 catches, 1 catch for 9 yards. Like, he was my tight end last year. I loved him. He helped me get to the playoffs. But there's 3 catches for 67 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then the very next week, 2 targets, 1 yard, 1 catch. In the Super Bowl, 2 catches, 4 yards. Like, it's just way too up and down. He does also have injury history. He's more of a best ball target than he is
right.
But there also is no value with him. He is our biggest negative differential. And it's mainly just because he's just kind of going up with the guys that are second options in their offense with no threats. And we just don't want to have to cross our fingers every week that he's going to get into the end zone. Because if he doesn't, a lot of these guys can go 6 for 63 or something of the nature without a score. And you're more than fine with that. He doesn't really have that. He's 3 for 60, like I said, and 2 touchdowns, or he's not getting anything.
And one thing with him, we love betting on talent. We do. But don't forget that talent for a tight end isn't just receiving ability. He is by far the best blocker at his level. He is a difference maker in that way. And that's part of the talent, we talk about. Are you going to, yeah, okay.
No, you're good. Keep talking.
So, but then moving over, first rookie that breaks, top 10, we could really talk about it. Brock Bowers, in the top 10, he's at 8 for us. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we are betting on talent here. And he is most likely the number 2.5 option in the offense behind Devontae Adams and Jacoby Meyer. He could be the number 2. He might be the number 3 with Jacoby Meyer, but his talent is amazing. When he catches the ball, it's hard to bring him down. He is the best tight end prospect we've ever seen. Just remember that, ever. So, bet on talent. He's number 8, and get excited about it. So.
He is my favorite player in this position to draft based on where he's going. He is going. There is only one that has him in the top 99 or top 98, and that's Sleeper. Other than that, 100th, 133rd on Yahoo. I will draft him in every single Yahoo league I have if that stays.
You're gonna fight me.
My favorite, if you're, we'll do a season long Prize Picks, like season long prop video, probably a month or closer to the season. My by far favorite one now is Brock Bowers over 635 receiving yards. It's not even going to be close.
No.
That is 37 yards a game.
If he's healthy, no way.
I'm
there's
telling
no way.
you, he's him.
Yeah.
He's going to flirt with 8 touchdowns. And the only problem is there might be some inconsistency because of quarterback play. And he's also, it's not like there's no weapons. Like Jacoby Myers, very formidable. Obviously, Devontae Adams, still a top 5 receiver. Zamir White is going to get a lot of volume, whether you think he's good or not, or whoever's the running back.
Right, exactly.
And then Michael Mayer, they just drafted him in the second round the year ago. I would like him on my team.
Too bad.
But you got them both, I guess. But he's that guy in best ball. He's even better.
Yeah.
Value wise, it doesn't make any sense why he's in that range. He should be in the others, but it's because rookie tight ends, there's a negative stigma. But also, Sam Laporta was tight end 1 last year, and he was a rookie. He had the greatest season ever, and he has the upside to do even better than that.
Well, yeah, he's way more talent. Sorry, Sam Laporta. We love you too, but the talent-wise, when you came out of college, they're night and day.
Mm-hmm.
And then jumping up to Evan Ingram, the number 1 tight end last year. Number 2 tight end. Number 1 through 9 through 17, I believe. Then there was the opposite.
9 through 17, he was tight end 3. Overall, he was tight end 2 behind Sam Laporta. But yeah, he was as safe as you get. Very consistent volume.
Yeah.
I'll pull up his numbers as you keep talking.
Evan Ingram's one of my favorite picks in the drafts based on where he's going right now. Just because when you want an elite tight end, he's going behind Kyle Pitts. He's going behind George Kittle. You're getting a guy that has volume upside that's crazy, and Calvin Ridley's not there anymore. So that kind of even makes more for volume. Of course, they did sign Gabe Davis, never been a volume guy. They did get Brian Thomas Jr., still a rookie. We do love Brian Thomas, but he's still a rookie. And then Christian Kirk's still there. But yeah.
Yeah, so last year, and again, he's another guy that was a former, he was a top tight end, slow burn, never really came into his own in New York. And then he goes to Jacksonville, and last year, only 4 games he didn't have at least 7 targets.
Right.
His lowest targeted game was week 1. He had 5 for 49. I will take that.
Cool.
If that's your floor, 5 for 49. Obviously, he had some worse games where he had 4 for 12 yards or 4 for 29, whatever. He's got upside too. He had 4 games with 10 receptions.
Right.
Multi-touchdown upside. He's got 80-plus yard receiving upside. He's got, breakaway speed, so to speak. He's safe. I'm actually surprised he was tight end 2 despite having 4 touchdowns. That was in Trevor Lawrence's worst year. Banged up. He will bounce back.
Right.
And if you were going with the Trevor stack, very easy to get to. I don't know really who to trust based on where they're going ADP wise. Like by default, Christian Kirk is the number 1 receiver, but he's also you got to draft him in the end of the 4th.
Right.
So it's kind of pricey. Brian Thomas, he could be a guy, but you got to draft him in the 7th.
Yeah,
Well, Evan Ingram, you can draft him in the 7th, and he could be the target leader on the team.
Oh yeah.
So like you said, safe as can be. Can't go any wrong with him.
I think we had a conversation about him over Kyle Pitts, and you could put him over Kyle Pitts, and no one would be mad at you. You know what I mean? Next up is Kyle Pitts, getting a new quarterback in Kirk Cousins if he's healthy, when he's healthy. A new coaching staff. Hopefully they use these pieces correctly. And he should easily flirt with 1,000 yards, in my opinion. He's done it in the past. He didn't have the touchdowns, but I don't see why 1,000 yards isn't in a possibility for him.
Yeah, I mean, with Kyle Pitts, his rookie season, he was, I think, the second ever rookie tight end to have 1,000 receiving yards.
Him and Mike Ditka.
And he had 1 touchdown.
Yep.
And then the next year he had 0 touchdowns. And then he dealt with some injuries the third year, then missed the fantasy playoffs, so to speak. And then last year, it was kind of just still more the same, rough, annoying offense. Jonnu Smith getting into rounds, stealing more from him than it was from Bijan. As much as we put that in Bijan's thing,
Right, of course.
like if you want to say Bijan, you get 50%, and Algier, sure. Jonnu Smith should not have been out targeted in any single game. Kyle Pitts.
No,
It doesn't
absolutely.
make any sense. And he is way too talented. He isn't an OJ Howard situation where he just was not as good as we thought.
Right.
He is very talented. Maybe he's not the 4th overall pick talented, but he's still a first round caliber tight end. He is younger than one of your favorite tight ends, whoever you think is tight end 1 in this class. He's younger than them going into his 4th season. And then Kirk Cousins. As soon as TJ Hawkinson went over, he was tight end 1 from that span to when Kirk went down last year. He was tight end 1 in that span. So why can't Kyle be the same thing, especially when your other options, you're flirting or you're rivaling touches with Drake London, who hasn't broken out yet. He could, but I don't know. Jerry's still out. Rondell Moore, Darnell Mooney.
Yeah. No, I think
and Jonnu Smith is gone.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts has to be the number 2 target in this offense. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
And that puts him even higher, like just in general. That's why there's so many. This is such a deep, group. Jumping up to the next guy, Trey McBride. He was the number 1 guy in his class. I was a big fan of his. And coming out, I thought, he would do really well. He missed out on the first year. Zach Ertz was there. Zach Ertz, played well at his age, and Trey McBride kind of missed out. But this year, Trey McBride has upside of, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of 20 plus fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
He has that upside, and that was without Kyler and with Kyler. So he can do it both ways. He's higher ranked on most sites, but we really like Trey McBride.
Yeah, I mean, Trey, it's really close to put him in the first tier, but I think he's more so, he belongs in the next one. I don't think he's broken out yet. He is capable of doing so, but in a lot of ADPs right now, he's tight end 3 in the majority of them. And I just can't put him over Mark Andrews or we'll talk about Dalton Kincaid.
Agreed.
Listen, he's good. He's really, really good. Really, the sample that I care about is what he did when Kyler came back last year, because Kyler missed the first 9 weeks coming off an ACL injury, and he was tight end 5. Points per game, tight end 2, 15.2 points a game, 6 catches of 20-plus yards. Like, really incredible. Very consistent. Targets-wise, 60.
Right.
In a 7-game sample, very strong. Can't go wrong. I just don't know. It's a little bit of projection to say that he can do that throughout the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
And also, want to point out, we're talking about upside, right? In this range of tight ends, 1 touchdown. So Kyler, I expect to come back and improve once again. When he was healthy before his ACL injury, Zach Ertz was
really
helping him
very good
a lot. So he does like tight ends. Like him a lot, but you got to invest early in him, probably a 4th round pick. But it's really easy to get to Kyler later on. There's not much competition for targets other than Marvin Harrison, which we love Marvin Harrison too, but he is going right where he probably should be. So we don't really see value.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Trey McBride. He's going early round 4, late round 3. So you got to go early. And while it's warranted that he's that high, it's not as much of a value as getting Kyle Pitts in the late 6th,
right?
Or Brock Bowers in the 9th.
Yeah, it's difference in
exactly.
ranking.
It's just kind of value preference and where you can get him, but we like him a lot as well because we love you all too.
And then the guys that check all the boxes, you have Mark Andrews starting that out for Baltimore. He's just really good when he's on the field. When he is healthy, he's just really good at football, and he's a good blocker. They don't necessarily throw the ball that much, but he could be the number 1 target in that offense. He could have the most targets. And I know everybody, Zay Flowers in the top 40 and stuff, but Mark Andrews has, been the guy in Baltimore for multiple years. So I think that he is a very interesting guy. Definitely a tier 1 guy, but as long as he stays healthy, He's a good football player.
Yeah, so last year he got rolled up on going into the end zone and
Mhm.
broke his ankle. That's why the hip drop is now a thing. It's not going to be as crazy as you think it is. It's to protect the players because Mark Andrews, the NFL product, is better when he's on the field.
Oh yeah.
In the sample that he played, weeks 2 through 11, he was tight end 3 overall. Um, led the all tight ends and touchdowns with 6. Great red zone threat. Lamar's never been a high volume to receiver. He's always been to tight ends, and throughout his career, it's been Mark Andrews.
Mhm.
I won a lot of leagues in his second year when he was a 10th round pick, and I picked him as my tight end too. He was tight end 1 in football. He has all the upside in the world, and then it's just hoping that he stays healthy. He also has competition behind him if he isn't playing well, but I don't expect that whatsoever. He's fantastic in a high octane offense.
Yep. And then Dalton Kincaid, he's basically got to be the number one target for Josh Allen, which is why he's so high on our list. I think that people are going to start to catch up with that. We're getting a lot of Dalton Kincaid in the 4th, 5th round. And that has to do with the fact that he's just going to be a target hog. They don't really have a true number one there at all. And since Stephon Diggs left and Gabe Davis, there are a lot of vacated targets. So Dalton Kincaid just kind of steps into them. He was the number one tight end in his class also, and he was considered a receiving tight end. Dawson Knox is still there, but Dawson Knox is more of a blocking guy. And so let Dalton Kincaid work.
If it wasn't for Sam Laporta having his historically great rookie year, we would be talking circles about Dalton Kincaid possibly being tight end 1.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because his 11 points a game and really strong into the year, really week 17 to, I'm going to include 18 because it was a win or go home, or not
Right.
win or go home, but it was
important.
basically a playoff game week 18 as well. And he was tight end 9 overall, very solid. And then they have one of the highest percentage of vacant targets because several receivers left. He is as steady as it comes. Tight ends are always better second year and on.
Right.
And like you said, Josh Allen needs something. And he's the only established for sure guy other than, I guess, James Cook, if you want to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, James Cook will have to catch the ball, but Dalton Kincaid will be the guy. I always get them confused and their names all messed up. But Dalton Kincaid will be the guy that is the number one target in Buffalo. And then Travis Kelce, we had talked about who we were going to put number one. We went up with Sam Laporta, but Travis Kelce, still a guy we're getting in best ball, a guy that is going to be talked about as possibly the number one overall tight end in redraft leagues. It's just, do you want the young buck or do you want the veteran? And it's kind of that whole thing. You have to pick your poison in these top 2 guys. So
he had his worst season in a long time last year,
mm-hmm.
and he still led all tight ends in points per game. He's still that guy, and it's just being 35, hoping that your 3rd round pick that you invest in, which is the lowest or latest you have to invest in him, because last year he was 8th overall. So you had to invest a 1st round pick, which he didn't pan out because he was under 1,000 yards, only 5 touchdowns. But when you are drafting him into the 3rd, early 4th, that is very reasonable. And then Patrick Mahomes is going later than he ever has. It's really easy to stack Kansas City like never before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's good for one last hurrah. Again, we were very split on who to put at tight end 1. If you want to put Kelce, that's fine. Basically, it's 50-50 between us and the other platforms that we're talking with as well. Love him. Should be in a high-powered offense. Should get pressure off of him now that he has better weapons.
Yeah.
Flirt with 1,000 yards once again. Put up he's chasing records now. That's the only reason he's still playing is just being the postseason catches, touchdowns,
right? The greatest
in history, and then tight end wides. Yeah,
that's what he's in there for. He's trying to be the greatest tight end ever. The cool thing about him is, like, he has the floor because of his touchdown upside.
Yes.
Like, he is the guy that is targeted in the red zone. There is not going to be another guy. They're all speedsters, and speedsters aren't necessarily red zone targets normally. You like taller, more higher vertical type of guys for red zone. Well, Travis Kelce's one of the best post up tight ends we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean,
And
5 of the 6 years before last year, his worst. He had a 5 touchdown season, but that was when he had 97 receptions and 1,200 yards. So, okay. The other 8 touchdowns, 10, 11, 12, 9. Over 1,100 yards every season, over 90 receptions every season. 3 of those had over 100 receptions. Like, he's a wide receiver too that you can put at tight end. Now, I don't expect him to flirt with those numbers. I think he'll be right around last year where he was around 90 catches, flirting with 1,000 yards. That's kind of right where he is this year. I just, I don't know.
touchdown upside. That's what we love. And then Sam Laporta, he's, a part of the Detroit offense who has actually a lot of mouths that come out of the backfield. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown is a top 5 pick this year, top 6 if you really want to talk about him being behind Jefferson or not. But, there's some guys there, but Sam Laporta is like the safety valve. He's going to get the easy catches. I don't know his touchdown upside necessarily is amazing, but he's a guy that, just kind of goes to work, takes his shovel and goes and
to answer your question, he led all tight ends last year with 9 touchdowns. The next best was 6.
9 touchdowns is
9
so
touchdowns
low.
as a rookie.
But that's so low for like a position, I feel like,
It is, but I mean, at the same time, we're trying to differentiate, and he's the one that's the red zone threat. Wish I had the red zone numbers in front of me, but 860 yards and 9 touchdowns. The only thing is, does it improve from there, or is that just kind of where he's going to be at?
Right, exactly.
Because other tight ends, we've started to see the top tight ends in football pretty consistently, other than last year, 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. The George Kittle, Kelce upside, the Andrews upside. And really, he was tight end 1, but it was in a down year of tight ends where Kelce was not only banged up, but just triple teamed as a tight end. And George Kittle actually led the all tight ends in receiving yards. But again, so much up and down. And then Hockenson got hurt at the end of the year. Otherwise, he would have had 1,000 yards as well.
Right.
Same thing with Sam Laporta, is like clear number 2 in terms of the passing offense, but there's a lot of mouths to feed. And every week, I don't know if he's going to be responsible for the 30 points that they put up.
Right.
But right now, I think he's actually starting to creep up a little too uncomfortably for me in terms of ADP. But that again, if we're not talking about what you got to invest and we're just listing them all,
right,
he's got to be at the top or very close to it.
He's also very uncomfortable in underdog because underdog does not help when it comes to tight ends. Like it's a very hard side on tight ends, and he's getting in the top 30. And I'm like, whoa.
And if you look at Yahoo and ESPN right now, 21, 24.
Yeah.
So a second round pick. And jury still remains if he is worth that. We'll see. I expect him to continue improving. But again, there's a lot of talent at tight ends. And if you can get a similar upside player 4 or 5 rounds later, why not?
Yeah.
When there's so many receivers going early.
Yeah. And I mean, we have taken Sam Laporta, but it's mostly been when we get him on Raw and we go for the double stack. Because then we get, the passing offense that's going to have 14 dome games that we keep talking about. It's exciting, but it's like you have to have a reason to go Sam Laporta. You shouldn't just randomly pick him. But hey, we'll see what happens with the tight ends. 11 of them that we really think could be really good. And that's exciting because we haven't had that in the past. But thanks guys for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Go like, comment, subscribe. We're going to be coming out with our other rankings. We're going to do live streams on Wednesday nights or whenever we have a chance during the week, each week. So we're excited about that for best ball. So yeah, just come hang out with us, get in this discussion. Tell us who we had too high, who we had too low, who is your stand in the top 11? Because I mean, all of those guys are really good. Who are you taking the stand on?
Every single ranking we do, I want to hear who the pure fade is, your biggest fade, and I want to hear your biggest upside or your number one target, because not all these guys, just because we like Sam Laporta and Kelce the most, they're third round picks. And if you like Kyle Pitts in the 6th or Kincaid in the 5th or Bowers in the 8th, like we said, or Same with David Njoku. I can't argue with you whatsoever.
Right.
It's really exciting. It's a fun position to talk about, more depth than we've probably ever seen in terms of upside at the position. And it's just really exciting to talk about. Like M said, please like, comment, subscribe. We'll be doing best ball drafts every single week, live stream now, Wednesdays, Thursdays, what have you. We'll be keeping alerts for that. We'll also be coming out with other strategy videos, rankings, all that nerdy stuff that is really fun and that hopefully you can keep on interacting with us with. We finally eclipsed 100 subs.
Yeah.
We appreciate every single one of you that have thus far. Here's to the next 100. Let's keep on growing. Let's keep on showing, and let's have some fun while we do it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we'll see y'all next time.